A-Day just happened down at Auburn this past week, Brownie.
And Jason Campbell, the legendary Auburn quarterback, was part of the radio call there, and he is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What's up, Jason? How are you?
Hey, guys. I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain. Had a great weekend, and it felt more like a fall game than a spring game.
It was a little cool, wasn't it? You're no doubt.
Yeah. It was a little bit chilly.
What was your biggest takeaway from sitting in the booth there and watching this version of the Auburn team in real time? Your biggest takeaway was what?
I will say this. I'd say they looked a lot more crisp this spring than they did last spring, Harsin's first year last year. There wasn't a lot of false starts when the quarterbacks has been taking the most reps in the spring, which is TJ and Robbie Ashford. The guys who was out there with them didn't have a lot of false starts. There wasn't a lot of balls on the ground. And those are things you look for when you're trying to come out of the spring and in the spring, like, have we taken a step forward? And it's those little things that kind of stands out to you that makes a difference. So to me, it just tells that the guys are kind of picking up the system a little bit more. Of course, Keith will be an offensive coordinator, and both guys is the defense coordinator. And both of those guys were Boise State guys. So I think the chemistry is better because those guys worked together before, and you can kind of see that a little bit more. And so we'll see what happens in the fall. My only concern with Auburn in the fall is, do we have enough depth to withstand the schedule that we have to play?
Understandably, the focus has been quarterback and what's coming out of this camp. And what was a five-man competition? D. Davis entered the transfer portal. Calzada has been limited this spring. The three guys you saw compete this past Saturday, who looked the best to you?
Well, it's that's what I asked Coach Harsin after the game. I asked him, I said, how do you really assimilate the play of your quarterback? When honestly you can't like tell how they're going to react as far as like when you're having competition against you, like guys got to be in the pocket and different things like that. How do you tell if a guy can stand in there with pressure coming at him and someone coming down on a blitz right at his chest and he can make an accurate throw? Those are things that to me that separates the guys from being a starter. And his answer was, right now we're focused on making decisions. Seeing how guys react, get in and out of the huddle, how they relate the plays to the guys. So I really think this competition is going to go into the fall. But TJ threw a really nice deep ball, I would say, on Saturday. He had some nice deep balls. He threw the ball towards the sideline on out routes and different things like that very accurately. But there was some throws that, kind of got away from him that, if he was going against a really good defense, it could have been some interceptions. And Robbie, the one thing about Robbie he showed was his athletic ability. The guy's really fast. He's elusive. He can, get outside the pocket if the pocket breaks down. He can keep the defense on their heels. The thing that he has continued working on that you can tell is just accuracy as well on the outside routes. On the inside routes, I thought he threw the dig routes really well. Through the routes in between the hashes, he threw very well. But outside of the hash, those are some things he can continue to work on moving forward.
I'm old enough, Jason, to have covered you, and you were a different quarterback in 2004 than you were in 2003. And if you're an Auburn fan, I guess you're sitting back saying, man, I hope TJ Finley has that maturity improvement that Jason Campbell had. What do you think the difference was for you from 03 to 04 that maybe advice you could give a TJ Finley or someone else that plays that position?
I'll be honest with you. The biggest thing for me was I finally got someone that would allow me to be myself. They let me just kind of what Auburn brought me in to be. When I first got to Auburn, I was the number 2 quarterback in the nation in high school, and I was a throwing quarterback. And then once I got there, Tug recruited me as a throwing guy because he was at Ole Miss. They threw the ball a lot. And I remember the first year he got to Auburn with Ben Leard, they threw the ball a ton. And then all of a sudden we got Rudy Johnson and everything shifted. And, we came just running the ball all the time, and it kind of just keeps you out of a rhythm when you're a guy that's a passer. And I remember Coach Borges came in and he said, well, you have to take a lot of negativity for a lot of things that's happened. He was just like, you just got to continue to be yourself, but just don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I think that's the biggest advice he gave me were some of those, like, especially 2003 and 2002, Petrino really helped me really well as well because he was kind of like Borges from that mindset. But in 03, we had an offensive coordinator that had zero experience of being a coordinator. And, you know, you was always afraid to make a mistake because they always say, hey, don't turn the ball over. Don't turn the ball over. Just keep us in a position to be able to, you know, kick a field goal if we have to. And as a quarterback, that's nerve-wracking, you know, and especially when you run, pass. And I think for me was hearing that advice was to go out there and just cut it loose. And if you have a turnover, just bounce back and keep playing. If I would tell TJ, if he was to be the starter in this year, 2022, the thing that hurts him is he wasn't able to win a game as a starter last year. So he has to come out the gates winning some games. And if he can come out the gates winning some games, I think he then wins over the fan base from that standpoint. But he has to come out winning some games, starting the season off. And the most important thing for him is he's not a guy that can run, per se, outside of the pocket or break down some plays. So he has to think faster with his decision-making. He has to understand, like, okay, is that a big play? Check down. Or big throw, check down. Like, he has to know where his guys are quicker than a guy like Robbie Ashford because he can't get out of those big plays with the legs.
Jason Campbell is with us, former Auburn quarterback, now part of the Auburn Sports Network. He is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, talking about Auburn's 8A game this past weekend. But the narrative around you, which was true, is not a narrative. You had a bunch of different offensive coordinators, Jason. It was like one every year. So if you are TJ Finley, he's kind of in that trend now. He had a guy at LSU. Then he had Mike Bobo last year. Now he's got Eric Kiesel. How difficult is that to flush the stuff you don't need anymore and learn the new stuff? And is there a I mean, it would seem very confusing to me. Is it as confusing as I think it might be?
Well, the hard thing about it is it's like once you get 2 steps, you got to take 2 steps backwards. And most guys are able to stay in the same system. They're able to get to those 3 and 4 steps of the offense where you're not even thinking about the basic stuff because you know it just like anything. And then you know the checks. So now you can continue to evolve the offense and everything. But when you're having to start over all the time, you really have to go back to a blank sheet of paper. But what I used to do was try to take something that was similar from each coordinator based off certain plays, even if the language was different, just to get me started off faster. I would try to find some similarity between some of those play calls and between some of those plays that can be a little bit of a carryover because everybody's different. Everyone calls plays differently. Everyone sets things up. And I always say this to everybody. I say, being an offensive coordinator is not easy. Like, it is an art. You have to be able to dial up plays in the first half to set things up in the third and fourth quarter. You can't just look at a sheet of paper and say, I'm going to call this, I'm going to call that. Like, you have to understand what you're doing as a coordinator to keep defense on their heels and keep them guessing. It's a chess match. And for a quarterback, if you want to be involved in that chess match, you really got to hunker in on learning the details of the offense and knowing when to get out of certain checks. Now, the thing for these kids nowadays that they didn't have to do that I did back when I played was I went to the line of scrimmage. I had to carry all the checks. I didn't look to the sideline and the coach have to say, hey, give you a signal or something to check into this play. No, you have to study your butt off all week, all spring, all summer to know if you got a bear defense and what checks to get into. If you had a 4-down defense and a Sam comes to the line of scrimmage, all of a sudden it changes your play. You got to check out of it, and you know coverage is going to roll based off what position they're in, their stance and everything. So these kids nowadays, they have it a little bit easier from a standpoint of they kind of get to the line of scrimmage and they look to the sideline. The coach kind of gives them the play. Where back in the day, once you got the play, it was yours. You had to get us into the right checks. You had to get us into the right pass blitz pickups. So there was a lot that went into it. So I think nowadays kids have an easier chance to transition from an offense to another offense because a lot of it is this RPO game, and you see it in the pros as well.
Now, the good news is, whoever the quarterback is, you got Tank Bigsby back there. But when you look at wide receiver as such an unknown, give me one name you're confident will be an impact guy at wide receiver this fall.
I would probably say the kid from Fort Myers, the Dawson kid. He's fast. He had a couple catches in the spring. He had one big drop, but the guy, he's very elusive, and I think he can help us offensively from the receiver position. I think this could be a year Capers can really step up for Auburn. He'll be a junior now coming up, and he's a tall kid, which can be really good on those dig routes and on those curls and combats because he's a big body, and I think he can help us in that area. But I just think that for the most part it's going to have to be a receiver position by committee. Right now, I just don't think you just say there's one guy that you say, hey, it's 3rd and 10, game's on the line, we got to have it. I think you have to build up to that. And I think that happens for early part of the season. If you have a game that you win a big game and guy makes some clutch catches in some tough moments, then you start to find out who those guys are. And I think that'll start to separate itself in the first half of the season.
Coach Harsin still painting the picture that it could be anybody's job at quarterback. As a guy who played the position, how quick do you want it to be whittled down to 2? And then when the season starts, would you prefer it to be your job, or are you comfortable playing the first few games, sharing reps with someone else? If it's you, Jason.
If it's me, I like to see. To me, I'm going into the fall and saying, okay, it's only one football, and guys have got to have an opportunity to build some type of chemistry with whomever is going to be the quarterback. So you like to find out within the first 2 weeks of spring, okay, we got to narrow this thing down to 2 guys. And I think you do that, and it gives the opportunity for chemistry to be there, guys to learn hearing certain guys make calls in and out of the huddle. But I wouldn't be afraid of taking this thing into the season just because you play Mercer the first game, you play San Jose State, I believe, the next game. And I think the fact that you get a chance to play those 2 games, I think you can learn a lot more about who your guy can be before you get into SEC play. And because there's only so much you can show me and teach me without getting hit. And, that's the only reason I asked that question to Coach Harsin the other day, because every time I played quarterback, we've never been live in college spring or fall heading into camp just because they want to make sure guys get there healthy. But when you look at our quarterback roster, you got 3-4 guys that can actually maybe be the guy. I wouldn't have been opposed in the spring just to make some of those moments live, just to see what I can get and who can respond. But I understand being precautious as well. You want to make sure you got enough guys going through the season. So I say this: if TJ or Calzada is the starter, I would still have a package for Robbie Ashford because he's too athletic, he's too elusive to stand on the sideline and not get utilized. Like, I would have a package where maybe you have a 3-4 play series package where he comes in 3-4 drives during the game, and there's certain packages for him to run and certain packages for him to move the offense, get in outside the pocket on bootlegs and nakeds and some QB RPO games and stuff like that, just to put pressure on the defense. Calzada's guy, he can move a little bit, but they're not as fast as Robbie is. But TJ, like I said, he probably has more upside on the game. I mean, upside on the offense is because he's been there the longest, so he knows a little bit more about the language and everything. So I definitely think this carries over to the first 2 games of the season before they really pull the trigger on the guy, because, like I said, now Calzada got to get his opportunities, and he didn't get them in the spring because he was injured. So over the summer and into camp, they got to move quickly.
There were some of the summer workouts that were player-driven. Who was, back in your day, who was the worst guy you hated to call up on the phone early in the morning or any time to say, hey, let's go work out? Did you have one guy that's like, I hate calling this guy, he's going to chew me out for waking him up?
No, honestly, I say this. I did, because if anyone knows Coach Yacht used to have us over there at 5:30 in the morning working out. And if your workout started at 5:30, you better be in that room at 5:15. Because if you show up at 5:30, he consider you late, and it's Saturday morning up-downs for an hour. So, guys was accustomed to wanting to be a part. But when you got guys that want to win and be part of a great team, I was just saying this over the weekend when I was down there to a couple of people. I said, football can be about S's and O's, but there comes a time when the players kind of take over. I said, and it doesn't matter, like, what's going on and anything like that. Players just make a decision together. Hey, we're going to lock in this thing together. Everybody throw out your individual awards and things that you want to achieve, and let's all go out and try to have one ultimate goal, and that's to win. And whatever that takes and whatever it looks like, everybody got to be all in. And that's the decision that you make. And when you do that, you tend to care a little bit more about your brother. You tend to care a little bit more about the guy that's playing next to you. He's depending on you to do your job. And so you got to make sure you're doing yours. And it's the little things like that. If you want to be a championship-style football team, nobody should have, when that phone rings, you should be willing and able to get up out of that bed and come over there and make sure you got to be where you got to be, because that's the difference between a winning mindset and a losing mentality.
Yeah, I'm gonna take all that and say you just said Ronnie Brown. Next time I see Ronnie, I'm gonna say you said Ronnie Brown.
Well, Well, he was my roommate, so he had to worry about me calling. He had to go knock on the door.
All right, he is Jason Campbell, the former Auburn great. You'll hear him with the Auburn Sports Network all season long. Jason, thank you very much for the time. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Y'all have a good one.
All right, buddy, you take care. Jason with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.